So now I've done the first part. I've got a grammar that I think works. This took me like 10 minutes or so. It took me longer as I went down the learning curve. It turns out that I personally make lots of mistakes anytime I use this any operator. I tend to not bother to qualify it with the qualifications, and then the grammar goes into the weeds and so on. But this is where we are now. So I've got this. It took me 10, 20 minutes to throw this together and get it to work using this grammar explorer thingy called Ohm Editor, which is really kind of like a REPL. I just sit here and work with the grammar. One can type directly into here. I prefer to use my own the editor that I'm really comfortable with, which is Emacs. Put that away. Yeah, let's see if I can run that. Okay. So once I've got that, normally what OhmJS wants you to do is once you've got this, you need to add a bunch of JavaScript with a namespace that has an entry for each one of these rules. I don't think that I should be writing code in any language. A lot of people dislike JavaScript. I dislike any of the possible languages, Rust or Haskell or Python or JavaScript. So the first thing I did with OhmJS was I wrote my own little DSL, if you want to call it. I call it an SCN, solution-centric notation, that matches up rule for rule with the grammar rules. And all it does is it lets me rewrite strings using string operations that I think are useful. And it turns out, for me, they're pretty useful. I've been using this for several years, and I haven't found that I need much more. So what I've got in the rewrite rule, for some reason, this is historical, I need to say % rewrite at the beginning instead of just the grammar name. And then I need one rewrite rule for every variant in here. So the big deal is here, stuff. There's a rec. So stuff, that becomes a call to stuff underscore rec. The next one is next statement here, and the other one is other. So we need one for every rule and one for every branch of every rule. So there's a few lines more of code here, but it's not an awful lot of lines. The very it's light on the brain power at this point, and so I can just concentrate on, I just want to rewrite this stuff. So the first thing I do is that I just go for an identity transform just to see that I've got the mechanisms in place and I haven't screwed anything up, which is happening more and more frequently these days. So I just go and write, for the main rule, I have to put this stuff, the plus operators have to go on the left-hand side here. So I say the tree parameter to the main rewrite rule is a plus kind of tree. And what I want to do is the rewrite is opened and closed with these two different open and close Unicode quotes. And then I can stick any character inside the quotes. And if I use this kind of bracketing notation, Unicode bracketing notation, and use the name of one of the parameters, then it will tree walk and interpolate the string that the tree walk gave back in here. So basically this says just tree walk everything and poop it out as the result of the whole thing. If we go to state, that's a little bit more interesting. Up here it says there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 parts that need to match to make a state. And I've called them LB for left bracket, left brace, name, enter. These are just legal JavaScript identifiers. Quote, quote, brace, quote, isn't legal in JavaScript, so I just gave it a name, LB. And by default, I just use these names. Later on, I get tired of doing that, and I just use names that I pick out of thin air that are shorter to type. Enter, step. The lowercase and uppercase don't actually matter here. The names of JavaScript identifiers are case sensitive, so I have to be consistent when I use them over here, but it doesn't really matter. I could have called this XYZ, but I called it capital exit instead, and right brace. And then this basically says, create a string that has a hard-coded new line in it, followed by the interpolation of whatever the LB thing was. You know, as we can see, it's not a big deal. It boils down to, I can't click on it properly. There we go. It boils down to an open brace. Then interpolate whatever the name thing turns into. That's here. And whatever the enter thing turns into. These cause tree walks. So that, you know, it goes down through the rest of the rules. The rules all return at least one string and one string only, and that string gets interpolated here. What else do I need to be looking at? I mean, down here next, I used an underscore because I got tired of typing. That's actually corresponds to this thing. And then there's a left quote. Yes. This is a pattern matching operation, which basically boils down to 3 matches. That match, 0 or more times, and that match. And then the whole thing is preceded by a number sign, which tells the pattern matcher don't skip spaces as we go. But that doesn't matter to the rewriter. The rewriter doesn't care if the pattern matcher skipped spaces or not. It just gets whatever the pattern matcher pattern matched. Let's see, left quote. And then this whole thing starred, I've called characters, plural, starred. And then there's a right quote, that thing. And those are the parameters that I can deal with on the right-hand side of this equation, of this rule. And because it's identity, I just want to see that I'm getting out exactly what I put in. So I just interpolate the thing, this next thing. I interpolate the left quote. I interpolate all the C's, 0 or more C's. If it's 0, this turns into an empty string. If it's more than 0, it turns into whatever the characters are. And then the right quote. And so on all the way down. The name. Notice I'm using lowercase name here and a plus sign here. And we've done that. I stuck it in the make file. Read file. I think I called it identity. Yes, there it is. And I run it on a bash script called text to text. And that bash script requires the current working directory, the directory that the tools are in, the ohm file, the rewrite file, any support code, which we're not, actually support.mjs is empty. And that's the case in a lot of these things. It turns out when you're doing some really heavy rewriting, you add some support stuff. I'll show that later. This minus sign says get it from stood in, and then I use bash syntax to say where stood in is. It's that variable called source up here. And then we run it, make identity. I have to am I in the right place? No, not. Do make identity again. There we go. And the output, because I didn't say make minus s, it includes this piece of noise. And the output looks more or less like the input did. There might be spaces and new lines missing because of the syntactic and lexical stuff going on. You can fool around, depending on how much you want to debug this, you can fool around adding more stuff, adding new lines and spaces in the right places. And we'll stop here.